what is up guys? Welcome back to Life from the Wrist. Hope you guys are doing well today. We're going to be talking about Rolex. There's been some insane prices on these new Rolexes that were recently released, and I kind of want to just give you my thoughts on it and also just kind of explain how things work and why these Rolexes are going for just mind-blowing prices. Obviously Rolexes are always in demand, but I think this time has really showed the craziness of the prices of Rolexes and what can really cause the prices to be just astronomical. Yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about. So if you aren't aware, Rolex released a bunch of new watches. They had updates to their Rolex Submariners, and they also released some very cool Oyster Perpetuals with very non-Rolex dials. You had things like I think they described it as a candy pink dial. They had these light blue dials, a yellow dial, kind of yellow mustardy dial, and obviously those are not very Rolex. They aren't what you think of when you think of Rolex, so people either loved them or hated them. But what we've seen is that the demand for Rolex watches really outweighs the supply, and the watches that were released, which included updates to the Submariner, Oyster Perpetuals. I think there was a new Yachtmaster, I want to say, as well. Correct me if I'm wrong. But these new releases, Rolex didn't release many quantities of them, and it was very difficult for authorized dealers to actually get their hands on them, which meant that the people who wanted to buy them were not able to get a hold of them. And so there really is a shortage of these new Rolexes, and simple economics, if the supply outweighs the demand, the prices will be jacked up because people will end up spending more money on them because they don't think that they will have an opportunity to get them in the future. And so if you go online and you search one of these references, it's almost impossible to find them. And if you are finding them, the prices of them are double or even triple what they are supposed to be retailing for. And obviously people on Instagram and Twitter and YouTube that people have been covering this quite extensively, but we're realizing that these prices are absolutely ridiculous. And how can a brand charge so much money for a watch when they say that the retail price is X, and then they get sold for triple that? I mean, I saw an Oyster Perpetual with a pink dial that was going for, I think it was $17,000 US, which is way over what the retail price is for those watches. And a lot of people were getting upset and saying, "Hey Rolex, how can you control the supply of these watches so much just so that you can sell them for so much more money?" And I think, yes, Rolex does obviously release a certain amount of watches, and they do control the supply of how they export their watches, and that's something that a lot of companies are doing. So I don't think Rolex is really the person to blame. One thing that you have to consider is that Rolex actually sells their watches to dealers who end up selling them in their stores or on their platforms. And the way that is exchanged is actually where the astronomical prices really comes into play. So the way that it works is Rolex sells their pieces to authorized dealers, and let's say that they buy them for 65% of the retail price. At that point, the authorized dealer has the option to pick a price that they want to sell that watch at. Rolex actually obviously they do have oversight into the way that they sell them, the way that their store sells them, what other brands that the authorized dealer sells. That's all taken into consideration before authorizing them as a dealer. But it's essentially the dealer who ends up figuring out what they want to sell it for. And that, I think, is where the disconnect between what we think is controlling the price and what actually is happening. Like I said, the dealers are buying them at let's say a 65% discount, and then selling them for the retail price. But what ends up happening is they get marked up, and they get marked up until they get marked up basically at a price where they will find someone who will want it, just because there is so little supply. So I think one of the things that I want to just mention here is, like, don't blame Rolex for the supply and demand problem. You know, Rolex itself already outproduces many companies. They produce so many more watches than a lot of the other smaller boutiques. They really outproduce many of the other small companies, and that's just what they've always been doing. You know, the demand for Rolex watches is obviously hot. We saw in the auctions over the last couple of weeks that Rolex watches are still very, very in demand, and people love Rolex watches. But that doesn't mean that they need to start really you know, tripling their production numbers. They already are producing it's definitely over 1 million watches a year, and to have that many on the market and to maintain you know, a high level of quality as well as kind of brand name, you know, that all has to be taken into consideration when figuring out how many they want to produce. And so I want to make sure that you as a follower of Life on the Wrist, or someone who's interested in Rolex, knows that it really comes down to the authorized dealer who ends up selling it to the end consumer. Most of the time, Rolex is not selling them straight to the end consumer. They're selling them to businesses who decide on a price and sell it to the end consumer, and that's really where these, you know, $17,000 from Oyster Perpetual, that's where the prices are coming from. It's from the authorized dealers. And so if you want to be mad at someone or you want to be upset about something, focus on the authorized dealers, because I think that's where you'll probably make the most progress, or at least when you talk to people about this topic, you'll understand the flow of where these watches are really going. I will say, like, it's crazy to me that these watches have received so much good press. I mean, there's so many memes about you know, all these brands that released really interesting watches this last year, and then Rolex, you know, changes the movement and updates the case, and that gets all the press. But hey, it's Rolex. People love Rolex. I have absolutely no problem with Rolex. I think they're really great quality watches, and it's just very interesting to see that people really are going mad for these, you know, new Rolex Oyster Perpetuals, and you know, the new Submariners and all that. So an interesting thing. I hope the prices kind of stabilize. It probably will take it a couple of years before they really start selling for the real retail price. I think 2021 will obviously probably see some more production coming out of the watch manufacturers. December is always kind of a time where the Swiss take their holidays quite seriously and spend it with their loved ones. So they probably are not producing as much during this time. Or it could be the reverse, actually. Maybe they are trying to pump them up for the holiday season. You know, so I hope this was helpful for you to understand kind of the flow of where the pricing of watches occurs, and that way your blame is put in the right place, as opposed to blaming you know, Rolex, the manufacturer. It's really the authorized dealers that you know, are ultimately selling these watches. If you are new to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button if you like these types of videos. We love watches. We create videos about watches, just about any topic that you can think of. So be sure to hit the subscribe button. Also, please smash that like button for us. It really does help us out. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about the pricing of some of these watches. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And with that said, guys, thank you so much for watching, and until next time.